do you think that no matter what you throw at a certain level of the population in terms of social services, in terms of money, in terms of checks, oh, you need $1,000, this universal basic income, whatever you want to call it, do you think there's a certain percentage of the population that no matter what you throw at these people to try and help them, they will never pull themselves out of poverty? I think there is, no matter what.
So,
and I know that's a pretty strong statement, and I'm not trying to shit on these people. Let's exclude the people with the drug addicts, the alcoholics. That is,
you're excluding a large amount of people.
I know.
Right?
But what I'm saying is, like, it's going to be a hot take. There are losers in society.
Okay.
There are. And no matter what you throw at these people, they'll always be a loser. That's my point.
Mm-hmm. I would argue, okay, and I accept your point. I would argue that the majority of people that would benefit from being provided with money and opportunity is much greater than the losers. And I'm okay with some losers getting money if it benefits the rest and the majority.
So do you think in Canada, when people are struggling to make ends meet, when most people, the average person, is living paycheck to paycheck, that we should be taxed even more? Or are you saying that no?
I don't think we should be taxing more.
You're saying just the multinational, the big
correct.
Corporations should be taxed more
because they're not taxed.
That's like the premise, the argument of today.
I don't think that small and medium-sized businesses should be taxed more. As a matter of fact, I think they should be taxed less, and I think individual people should be taxed less. I think income tax should be lower, and it can be lower. It can't be if we don't increase corporate tax, multinational corporate tax, because then we don't have the money to sustain our society.
Because we can't, like, let's actually try and solve this. It's a very complicated situation. We're obviously not going to change the system as what it is today. That's not going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years, or probably in our lifetime. How the hell do we fix this then? Because I know you're just saying, well, just tax them. But why aren't they doing that already? How the hell does this get fixed?
Because corporations are more powerful than the government. Because corporations, what they've done is they've convinced society to act against their own interests. Just like I was saying before, corporations have convinced...
But you're arguing to change the system, which is not realistic. How do we fix the problem we have today? It's not.
It is. If people understood...
You want to tear it down and restart.
So you don't think it's realistic to believe that the majority of our population would support taxing Apple, for which they have absolutely no affiliation, the majority, to be able to address many social
I agree. I agree. But what I'm saying is...
And we live in a democracy, therefore if most people support it...
The politicians just won't do it. How do we get them to tax Apple? How do we get them to tax Amazon?
It's a system that things have to be done at the same time. So when you start doing those things, you are when you start regulating these companies and you start taxing these companies, what you're also doing is you're removing their power at the same time. So it's a double taxing them is one effect. The second effect is that you're decreasing their power. You're decreasing their ability to hold the government hostage.
Yeah, their influence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when a corporation can convince a population, it's kind of like it's kind of like the Republicans do in the States. Okay, the Republicans convince,
but not the Democrats.
No, well, the Democrats in the States are a right-wing party. They are. Okay. If you look at the spectrum of right versus left, where the Democrats fall is left of the Republicans.
Yes.
That's like saying Paul Bernardo is better than Ted Bundy. Technically, yes. But what they do is they convince the population, their greatest power is convincing the population to act against their best interests. So they convince the population. Republicans are probably, for a large majority, poor. They're in states that are poor, and yet they've convinced them to side with Republicans who cut corporate taxes and don't forgive student loan debt. How have they done that? When the majority of Republicans voters and the majority of voters in general
would
benefit.
The student debt part is because the government guarantees those loans. That's why they don't let you declare bank. You have to keep it on your file. It's because the government has the
correct.
has
but these student debt companies were predatory. So why is it the government that has to take the fall?
Well, the government created that problem. The government created that problem because the loans were guaranteed. So if you have a loan that's guaranteed, you're going to loan as much as you can. Okay. It's guaranteed by the government.
So what do you think about corporate bailouts?
I think they're terrible.
Okay.
I think they're stupid.
Are they capitalistic?
No,
they're not.
They're not.
Okay. And why do we do them?
It looks good on the surface. It looks good on paper when a politician. You can take the example of Bombardier. Take the example of Air Canada. When these companies should be going bankrupt because they're not.
You think it looks good as a politician when they bail out a company?
Trudeau.
I don't think it looks good to the rest of society.
You and I can see through the fog. But what I'm saying is, most people. Trudeau, when he made the announcement, we bailed out Bombardier, whatever the amount was, and then the board of directors took big fat bonuses. He spun it as, look how many jobs we just saved. And in the short term, he's right. He did save a lot of jobs in the short term. But what has to happen, you have to let these companies go bankrupt. It's not like all of the assets are just going to disappear. What's going to happen is when these types of companies go bankrupt, because they're not being run properly, and because the government gives a backdrop, they should go bankrupt. Are people going to lose jobs? Yes. But what's going to happen? Another company from somewhere else, with a healthy balance sheet, is going to come in, buy the assets 10 cents on the dollar or whatever it is, and they're going to start up all over again, and the airline is going to be just fine within a year or 2 years. That's what's going to happen. And these governments don't let capitalism take its natural course. It looks good on paper to save 30,000 jobs.
And that's the problem with capitalism.